In this video, I am going to be demonstrating how to pour up a study model. I have a maxillary impression here and a mandibular impression here that I will be using to demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and start off with my stone. Because I'm going to pour up 2 impressions, I'm going to use a little bit extra. It depends on what you are going to be pouring up, whether it's just one or the other, how much you will need. But because I'm going to use both, I'm going to use a little bit of extra stone here. And make sure that you have your PPE on, like your mask. All of this stuff does kind of, as you can tell, get very messy and dust flies and all of that, and you don't want to inhale any of this material. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my water. I always like to keep the pressure low so that way when I start to incorporate my water with my stone powder here, that I am adding a little bit at a time. If you add too much water, your material will be very runny and it will take longer for it to set up and harder to put this material inside of your impression. So I let it get about room temperature. The hotter the water is, the faster it'll set up. The colder the water, the slower it will set up. So I get room temperature water. I start by adding just a little bit, and then I will start mixing. You can tell that it's kind of chunky almost, and that's how you know you still need to add some water. You need your powder and your liquid to be fully incorporated. You almost want your mixture to be something of like a frosting or kind of like a pancake powder. So that way when you, like I said, put it into your impression, you have a good mixture. This is ultimately the texture and consistency that I want my stone to be in. For demonstration purposes, if I were to make this material too runny, as you can see, it's just very runny, too liquidy, falls off too quickly. What you can do is you can always add some more powder of the stone into your mixture, and that way you can get that frosting-like consistency. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my dental vibrator now. I'm sorry if it is a little loud and hard to hear me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it down and get all of the air bubbles up from this material. As they come up, I'm going to pop the air bubbles and keep pushing down and popping the material as those air bubbles start to surface. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my maxillary impression first. I'm going to hold it by the tab out here, and I'm going to put pressure and a push on my dental vibrator for this. I have my spatula here. I'm going to get a little bit, and I'm going to start by placing my spatula on top of my dental impression here and kind of work it around so that way the stone material can get on all of the occlusal surfaces here. So I kind of almost want to layer it. As you see these bubbles come up, once again, you want to pop them. As you know, bubbles are normal. You do want to make sure that you're not getting them in your study model, as it will just make it really hard to make any type of denture or partial or a retainer or anything like that. You want to make sure you're not having any voids in it. So once again, I'm just going to keep layering this material. As you can see, once it hits that vibrator, it becomes really runny, and it's easier for you to kind of maneuver it around your dental impression. So once again, going to let it run through all of the surfaces. I'm going to pop these air bubbles as they come up, and then I will do my next layer, and I will just make sure that I fill my all the way up until my vestibule, and then I will start to build my base here. Alrighty, so now that I have this material filled up all the way to my vestibule, I'm going to start to build my base. So your office may have you use something like this that helps you create your base, where you will just fill your stone material into this kind of mold here, or you can build one on your own. Personally, I like to build them on my own, but you will do whatever your office likes you to do. So I always start by getting a big chunk of it, and I start smoothing it and adding it to the top. You want to make sure that it has enough of a grip to it that when you go to remove this material, this stone impression or this pour up study model from your alginate impression, that it is not going to break. Something like this would be way too thin. As you try to take this off, once the material has set up, this will break or shatter. Alrighty, so this is a good thick base to how you would want it. It's going to make it easier for, like I said, for you to take apart your model. Once I have my base created, I just go ahead and flip it over, and I'm gonna let this material set up on its own. Usually it does take about 20 to 30 minutes depending on the temperature of the water that you use. But once this is set up, we will come back and show you how to break it apart. Okay, so it has been about 30 minutes and this material is hard as rock, stone, just like it says. So I'm going to go ahead and break this model apart. I wanted to show you the difference between something that is up and off the tray and will be easy to remove versus something that doesn't really have a base and you won't be able to take out. So I'll go and try and demonstrate it. When you take this out, see how the material just kind of chips and breaks? You can't really get it out of here, and then it cracks in half. So having that base is really important, so that way you can make sure that you are getting a good study model once you remove it. I'm going to go ahead and remove this one now. I'm going to gently wiggle and see how easily this one comes off. I have a little piece of alginate back here, but that's fine. And now we have a really good study model here. It has a nice thick base. I have an impression of the frenum right here. I have all of the teeth from the distal of the last molar. It's nice and centered. So if your office does have this and you use it to trim, this is similar to what it will look like. Basically, you're just going to get off any of this extra material here and make it nice and smooth, so that way when you send it to a lab or when you make a retainer or something like that, it is nice and trimmed up.